Welcome to the Start Something Show. Join world-renowned experts, change agents, and everyday folks who have done the amazing. All here to help you start something incredible. Now it's time to step out, live your perfect day, and create a legacy with your host, Tina Dietz.
Well, hello again. This is Tina Dietz, and welcome to another episode of the Start Something Show. Woohoo! Today on the show, I'm welcoming Michael Port, who is a former actor turned public speaking expert. And Michael travels all over the country, all over North America, and indeed all over the world, teaching people how to be powerful from the stage and also to be authentic and prepared for whatever life throws at you. In his own right, he is also the host of a very popular show, the most popular show on the topic of public speaking, which is called Steal the Show with Michael Port. So if you're joining me here on iTunes or Stitcher or one of our other podcast stations, you might want to go ahead and look him up and subscribe to his show as well if you're interested in the topic of public speaking. Very, very cool. So, well, my dears, I have some other exciting news. Next week on January 27th, that's Wednesday, January 27th at 7 p.m. Eastern, I'm going to be co-hosting my first ever Blab. What is Blab, you say? Blab is a live video streaming platform that is similar to Periscope, but I think way better. I talked about Periscope in a previous episode when I was talking about emerging technology and tips and tricks for your business. Well, Blab is a live streaming video. It does not require an opt-in of any kind. It's kind of like attending different shows, but on a live platform, or you can watch recordings. So myself and my counterpart, Rye Taylor, who was one of the folks who helped me launch the Start Something Show, he is from Story Pop Studios. He and I are going to be having a conversation and inviting you to join in on Blab. We're going to be talking about audio trends to build your audience in 2016. Now, if you're listening to a podcast, you already know there's a big, big push in audio right now, particularly in business. So we're going to be focusing on two major trends. One is podcasting and the other is audiobooks. And we'll be talking about both the production side as well as the marketing side of things and inviting you to join in the conversation with us live on January 27th. So if you go to blab.im and keyword search audio, you will see my shining face along with Rye's, and you can subscribe. It doesn't give us your email address. Like I said, there's no opt-in, but it'll just send you a reminder when that Blab is happening. And then you can go ahead and join in simply using your Twitter account and ask questions, join in the conversation, and maybe we'll even open up a video seat for you so that we can chat live on the air and have this awesome conversation about using audio to build your business in 2016. Ryan and I both have a lot of experience in this area, and we're really looking forward to sharing with you kind of some industry insider information that we've grown to know recently and that has been emerging for the last year or so. It's very, very fascinating things happening in the world of audio, particularly podcasting and, of course, audiobooks, which is a big passion of mine. So very excited. Again, blab.im next Wednesday, the 27th, coming up. And by the way, if you're hearing this after the fact on the 27th, still go to blab.im and look up either my name, Tina Dietz, or just look up the word audio, and you should be able to snag the recording of that particular show. So good stuff happening there. All right, let us go and switch gears and talk to Mr. Michael Port and hear some more about being well prepared in life and in business and some great public speaking tips. Let's take it away. My guest on the Start Something Show today is Michael Port. Michael can be seen on MSNBC, CNBC, and PBS as an on-air expert and as the host of the most popular podcast on public speaking and performance, Steal the Show with Michael Port. He has written 6 books, including Book Yourself Solid and Steal the Show, the latter which, according to the former president of Starbucks, was the most unique and practical book ever written on the topic of public speaking. So his books have been on the bestseller list of the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, USA Today, and Publishers Weekly. He is everywhere, and I'm happy to have him on the show today. Michael, thank you so much for starting something with me.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure. I really like that bio. That was
You
great.
like that?
And well read, I have to say.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Very well done.
I'll take the compliments where I can get them. No problem there. So, well, you know what? One of the things that has fascinated me as I was looking into your background and what you do, because you are extremely well known for training people in extraordinary public speaking, which is such a huge interest and concern of our audience here at the Start Something show. But you didn't start out as a business person or a public speaker. You were an actor. Is that right?
I was, yes. I was an actor. I have an MFA from the graduate acting program at NYU. And then I worked professionally for a number of years after that. And I did shows like Sex and the City, Third Watch, All My Children, Law and Order, 100 Center Street. I was in films like The Pelican Brief and Down to Earth, The Believer, Last Call. And then I did hundreds of voiceovers. That was my bread and butter. I did voiceovers for companies like AT&T. I used to do the 1-800 called ATT. Remember that one?
Oh, yeah, I do remember that one.
And I used to do Pizza Hut. At Pizza Hut, you can get so many. At Pizza Hut, we've got so many great pizzas. No, wait. Shoot, I don't remember that one.
It's been a long time ago, wasn't it?
I'll remember it by the end. But
I love doing voiceover work. It's one of my great loves. It's a bit more of a hobby for me than anything else. But man, it is so much fun to get into a booth and play with voice and words and make it come to life. It's really cool.
It is. It's a funny business. You know, when you're doing voiceovers for the ad world, you know, you'll stand in a booth for 8 hours sometimes. I remember when I was doing Braun, and the entire tagline was this: Braun, smart thinking. That was it. That was the whole tagline.
How many times you do it?
Oh, gosh. 200-300. But the reason I bring it up is because you'd have 15 people in the room, some from the ad agency, some from the client, and they'd all want to have their say. So yes. I'd do it once, and then one of the guys would go, "Now listen, Michael, could you do it with a little bit more rye?" Okay, sure. How about this? Braun, smart thinking. You know, it's the same thing.
Exactly, yeah.
There's not a lot you can do with Braun smart thinking that's different. And of course, what ultimately happens, they pick the first one you did at 9 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
So those were interesting days. I didn't go into the business to do that kind of work. I went into the business to create something that would have an emotional impact on people. So I got to the point where, although I was working, I felt frustrated. And I decided that I was going to go into business. I thought, well, maybe I could have some more control over my life. And so I talked my way into a job for which I was completely unqualified.
Well
now,
done.
I told them I was unqualified. I said, listen, I don't have any of the certifications that you think you need for the person who plays this particular role. But let me tell you why I think that I'd be a great candidate and why I think you should choose me. And I ended up convincing them that they should. And that worked out really well. And I got some promotions, in large part because I took a huge number of risks and I wasn't so worried about what people thought. I didn't have a preconceived notion about what one was supposed to do in the industry. And I wasn't scared of anybody that I worked for. And then after a number of years doing that, I decided to go out on my own and I started a consultancy and I served that same industry. And, you know, geez, that was 13 years ago. 6 books later, 3 children, getting married, though, next week, which is not next week, 3 weeks from now. So when this comes out, I will be married. I'll be back for my honeymoon and I'll be really happy and very lucky guy.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
That's
so,
awesome.
You know, my first book, Book Yourself Solid, was focused on, you know, getting as many clients as your heart desires. It was all about being in service of others and building a business doing so. And that's been the big part of our focus for the last 10 years. Over the last few years, we've also started and then developed another part of the business called heroic public speaking. And that's been focused on teaching performance on the stage, you know, for the hotel ballroom so that you can speak and perform in front of other people. So you really stop speaking and start performing and have that kind of impact on people.
Yeah, entertainment really is key to success when it comes to speaking, isn't it?
It really is. And what I did with the book Steal the Show, however, is even though the company is really focused on teaching public speaking, I mean, that's really where our sweet spot is. I wrote Steal the Show for everyone. Because if you think about life is made up of lots of high stakes situations. And how you perform during those situations determines the quality of your life. So if you're in a high stakes situation and you fall flat, you just can't rise to that occasion, then not a lot's going to happen. But when the spotlight is on you, if you can step into that light and into that moment and shine, well, then you can do big things. And think about it. A job interview, a negotiation, a sales pitch, even a Skype conversation, even the first time that you meet your future in-laws, they all have elements of performance. Now, when I say that, people say, oh, but that means you're going to be inauthentic? No, wait, huh? What? No. They get a little bit upset. I say, no. So listen, good performance is not about manufactured behavior. Good performance, to me, is about authentic behavior in a manufactured environment. Good performance is about authentic behavior in a manufactured environment. All of those situations are manufactured to one degree or another. If you go in for a job interview and you're sitting across the table from 3 people who are judging you and trying to decide whether or not they should give you this job, it's a manufactured situation. They're asking you a certain number of questions. You're giving your best answer, to demonstrate that you'd be a great candidate. You have an agenda. They have an agenda. It's all manufactured. You don't just go in there and be like, listen, I'm happy to be here, but I've got a couple texts that I want to do. And then I just want to take a quick nap. So I'm going to take my pants off and just lie down, and then I'll get to you when I'm ready. You don't do whatever you want to do.
Is that why I'm unemployable? Oh, man, I did tell you.
You got it. Exactly. Yeah. So the same thing is true for so many different situations. You don't just go in there and do whatever it is you want to do. And that means it's a performance. You're choosing how you want people to see you. That means there are performance elements. And there are performance elements. And if you can leverage performers' skills, then you can do really well in those environments. And being a chameleon is actually a wonderful skill to have. And again, it's not inauthentic. Think about a chameleon for a second. When a chameleon is on a green leaf, the chameleon turns green. When the chameleon is on a red leaf, the chameleon turns red. The chameleon is not pretending to be green or pretending to be red. They're actually turning a different color. It's completely authentic for them. And we have so many different parts of our personality, so many different ways of being that we can enjoy, so many different styles of behavior that we can enjoy. And if we know what we're trying to achieve, then we can choose the right role for that situation so we can produce the results that we want.
So this is really a matter of being responsive and learning how to pull out and in the moment be authentic in any given situation as the best version of yourself.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And one of the things that is essential is preparation. This is another thing that the performer knows, that the person who doesn't think of themselves as a performer is surprised to learn and excited when they do. One of the things that makes great performers so authentic is their level of preparation. So the better prepared you are, the more authentic you can be. Why? Because you can stay in the moment and respond to what is actually happening and not have those wheels spinning in your head trying to figure out what to do next. And of course, if you get taken off track, you can always go right back on track because you are so well prepared. Mm-hmm. When you are well prepared, you're more comfortable, you're more relaxed, you're more confident. And relaxation, comfort, and confidence often allow you to be more authentic because your true self, your personality can shine through. People can see who you are, and hopefully you allow people to see who you are. Performers don't hide either. They don't wrap themselves up in layers of persona trying to protect themselves. They know that when their voice is true, that they're very strong. And they're able to silence the critics. And there are two types of critics. And I addressed this extensively in the beginning of Steal the Show, because one of the reasons that we're afraid of performance, public speaking and other types, is because we are afraid of getting rejected. I mean, why else would we be afraid?
No, there's no other reason than that.
People are going to think, well, people might say things like, oh, they don't know what they're talking about, or, geez, that guy's he's stupid, or, geez, why is he wearing those pants? Like, what is he thinking? This is what we're afraid of.
Exactly.
And until our desire is stronger than our fear, we may make small choices. But when our desire is stronger than our fear, then we're not as worried about the critics. But there are two types, as I said before. There's the external critic, and then there's the internal critic. And the external critic, that's the person out in the cheap seats. That's the person who pushes others down to lift themselves up. And then there are the internal critics. Those are your voices of judgment. And they come from voices that you heard when you were younger. They come from voices that you have placed in there over the years yourself due to, different failures or things that have been different.
We're well familiar with those, that's for sure.
Exactly. I've had more of those than I could even count.
Yes.
But when those voices of judgment are very loud inside our head, then we hear the voices of judgment on the outside even more. But when we quiet down those voices of judgment in our head, well, then we don't hear the external critics so much. I mean, we know they're there, but we just don't care that much. And that's because you're focusing on results, not approval.
Right. So the prerequisite to all of this, the prerequisite then to becoming a great performer really starts with more internal work then, with getting firm and comfortable and clear with who we are.
Absolutely right. And that's the first part of Steal the Show. It's the performer's mindset. Because think about it. If we jump right into part 2 of Steal the Show, which is about the performer's principles, and then we go into part 3, which is a masterclass in public speaking technique, but we don't have the performer's mindset. We don't see the world from the performer's perspective. Well, those principles may be hard to adopt and hard to adhere to. And then certainly all the technique, we can layer technique on top of insecurity or constraint or fear. But if we do that, it's not going to help us that much. The technique is what allows us to shine when we know how to play the right roles in any situation, how to crush our fears and overcome the critics, and really find our voice. That's critical, finding our voice. And so, this concept of playing the right role in different situations is really important. And it's a new concept for a lot of people to think about developing themselves in different ways for different situations. And I'll give you an example. Herb Brooks was the coach of the men's U.S. Olympic hockey team in 1980. And at the time, hockey players in the Olympics were amateurs. They came out of college. But they weren't that good. They were kind of small and inexperienced compared to their toughest competitors, the Russians. Now, the Russians, they were all pros. They were being, filled with steroids and all sorts of hormones just to make them bigger and bigger. And they were mean and they were big and scary. And they dominated the sport for so many years. And at that time, of course, we were also in a Cold War, coming out of a Cold War. And tensions were still pretty high. So the U.S. Winter Olympics were being played in Lake Placid.
Yes, I remember these games. They were a huge deal. Huge deal at the time.
And the stakes were so high. And Herb Brooks was chosen to coach this team. Now, Herb Brooks was known at his university in Minnesota where he was the coach as an affable guy. Nice guy to play for. But when he coached the Olympic team, he was a slave driver. he was relentless. His players hated him throughout most of their training. He decided that he needed to play a very different role in order to produce the kind of results that he wanted. Because going in there, these players, they hated each other because they were all rivals from the different universities and colleges. And they used to fight, literally. Hockey is about punching people in the face sometimes.
Yeah, maybe sometimes.
Yeah, they would fight with each other on the ice. So he decided, well, maybe if they hate me more than they hate each other, they'll stop hating each other.
The enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Yes.
Yes.
So they bond together as a result of his torture because they go through this together. And he needed to work them harder than they've ever been worked in their life if they wanted to skate with the Russians. They'd never played at that level before. And on top of that, he needed to choose players not based on their star power or even necessarily their talent, but how they would fit together. And he didn't even give the U.S. Olympic Hockey Association the opportunity to help him pick the team, which is typically how it's done. He said, here are my players. I don't even need much practice. I don't need to see anymore. That's it. Tryouts are done after a day, and we're going to get to work. And so they were furious at him. The players hated him. It looked like it was going to be a total disaster until they won the gold medal. Then they said he was a genius because he produced the results that everybody wanted. Now, if he had tried to appease everybody and tried to just play the role that they wanted him to play, he wouldn't have won. And as a result, they would have been disappointed in him. So all his pandering at the beginning would have gotten him nowhere. But he had a vision. He made strong choices. He took risks. He chose early and often, and they won. Now, maybe there's a chance they didn't win. That's possible. That could have happened too. But he decided, I'm willing to take this chance because the stakes are so high. I have got to do something really, really bold. And that's the question you ask yourself. What's more important, results or approval? What kind of role do you need to play in any given situation in order to win that day?
Well, then how do we reconcile then? Let's say that, we're not necessarily a ruthless person. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the folks that are our listeners here are extremely mission-driven, very heartfelt, very service-oriented, kind of the opposite of, what you would think about when you think about what, Herb Brooks was known for in those 1980 Olympics. So how do we keep our authenticity and produce results at the same time if you're the kind of person who is not necessarily super aggressive or, kind of polarizing?
Sure.
Do you have to be polarizing to be successful?
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
You don't need to be polarizing. You don't need to be aggressive. You definitely don't need to be ruthless. That particular situation was one particular situation, and that role helped them win in that situation. But you might need to play a role that's entirely different. So, for example, I play different roles with different clients. And often when we start with a group in one of our graduate level programs, I'll say to them, listen, at different times throughout your training, you're going to see me coaching somebody differently than I coach you. And then you may see me coaching them differently 2 weeks later. And you might have me coaching you one way 1 week, and I behave very differently with you 2 weeks later. Don't start judging it. Don't start asking, does Michael like me or not like me? He's being really chatty and really light and easy with that other person, but he's kind of being really tough with me. Or he's really chatty with me and like really easy on me, and he's not really pushing me, but he's really pushing that person. Does that mean he cares more about that person getting better? We start doing this with our teachers. But what I tell them is that I'm choosing to work with you specifically because in the way that I'm choosing to work with you, rather, is specific to what I think you need in that moment. That's playing a role. As a parent, you play roles. Sometimes I want to throw my children out the window.
Mm-hmm. With you there.
Yeah. I never have, and I never will, because I'm able to manage my emotions. And sometimes, when your kids are behaving a little bit badly, and that if you're tough on them, it's just going to make it worse, and they're going to, throw a fit. They're going to break down even more because they can't handle that at the moment.
Yes, absolutely.
So you need to be so soft and so loving and so caring that it just eases their anxiety or their tension or whatever stress that they're having. Well, we're playing a role in that moment. It's authentic. It's part of who we are. We may feel like we want to throw the kid out of the window, but we know that we need to change our behavior in order to produce the result. So it's never about having to be either soft or hard or nice or mean, or it's never about a quality. It's not meaning that not one is not right and one is wrong. It's all unique to the situation. And maybe another hockey team at another time with another coach needed a very easygoing coach who was their best friend because that's what they needed. And Herb just chose in this particular situation a different way. And a different coach might have chosen a different way and still been successful.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Thanks. And public speaking is an area where, of course, a lot of folks, not me, not you, but a lot of folks have, anxiety around, and it has a lot to do with how we're wired. And now this is about performance. This is all about any situation, like you said, in terms of interviews, interacting with clients, being on the stage, everything in between. What are some of the questions someone should ask themselves if they're considering more public speaking in their business to kind of assess if they're ready, or even if it's a good marketing or visibility tool for them?
Sure. So just for the record, I get nervous before I speak. I even get a little bit nervous before a podcast. And I've done, 300 interviews. I get nervous before I go on TV for an interview. I get nervous all the time. But I know that I've done my work. I know that I'm prepared. I know how to behave in those situations because I've developed skill. And that's what makes the difference. If you're asking yourself, should I go and do public speaking to help build the business or get clients? First question I would ask is it something that you really want to do? Or is it something that you think you should do because you know other people do it and it can be effective? If it's the latter, I'd say don't do it. Nobody's required to go and use public speaking as a technique for building a business. Absolutely not. If you don't want to do that, why do that? Maybe you'll have to give a toast at a wedding. Maybe once in a while you'll have to give a business speech, but you don't have to make it something you do all the time if you don't want to. And people who give speeches are not better than people who don't give speeches. Let's just get that, on the table right off the bat. So on the other side, if you really are excited about it, if you have this desire, if you think that there's something in it for you and for the audience, then ask yourself, well, is it for me, or do I think that I can do this in service of the audience? Because it's never about us. It's always about them. Always about them. If we tell stories about ourselves, we're only telling those stories because we think it's relevant to the audience and will help them in some way. And that's what's important. We're always in service of them. So when we start looking at developing a speech, first thing we want to ask ourselves is, what's the big idea here? Because if you're going to speak, there's got to be a big idea that supports the speech and that acts as the through line. Now, that through line is leading you to a promise so that each speech delivers on a promise of some kind. So if I get hired to give a keynote on public speaking, my promise is that you will be a better public speaker by the time I'm done. And it's 100% guaranteed. I can't promise I'll turn people into Martin Luther King, but I can promise they'll be better than they were before.
Absolutely.
So we need that promise. And our job then is to deliver on that promise. That's critical. So what's the big idea and what's the promise? Those are the first two things. Now, back to the big idea. Sometimes the big idea we get worried about this because we think, well, I don't have a big enough idea. Or my idea is not different than everybody else's. So I don't know if I should do this, And I think we can let those fears fade away. A big idea doesn't need to be different to make a difference. It just needs to be true for you and the people you serve. So let's use Martin Luther King as an example again. his most famous speech, the I Have a Dream speech, is based on the big idea that men and women are created equal. That's the big idea that supports the through line of the speech. Well, was that a really different idea?
Not at all.
Not at all. It's in the Constitution, for God's sakes, but it wasn't realized. So it was a big idea as a result. And sometimes big ideas are confrontational. They don't have to be, but sometimes they are. And I think that our big idea should only be controversial or confrontational or push buttons if it's authentic for us. But we don't need to try to come up with something that's going to push buttons just to get attention. You know, somebody in I'm in this Facebook group in the speakers group in Facebook with the professional speakers. It's a private group. And one of the guys posted this blog post that he saw someone write. And he's like, I'm not really sure what to make of this. So I looked at it, and it was one of those posts that was trying to get attention by doing a scathing report on the speaking industry. You know, like it's BS that all the same speakers are always hired. You shouldn't be hiring the speakers for blah, blah, you know, just some like one of those things.
I know. It gets so negative, and then it ends up being kind of a gotcha.
Well, And the thing that was so interesting is that the article actually it wasn't, I don't think this person was a journalist type, because the article contradicted its same point. It said, oh, but here are great speakers who are really well known, who are authentic, and you should hire. So the point of the article was wonderful, which is you should hire authentic speakers that are relevant to your audience. It's great. But the whole tone of the article was designed to be let me make some noise. But there's not actually a real, wasn't any kind of real statement underneath it.
Yeah, I mean, we can throw tantrums and get attention, but it's not going to leave us in a powerful place.
That's exactly right. Yeah. So you can be a performer or you can be a critic. I think you've got those two choices, performer or critic, but I don't think you can be both.
No, I don't think so either. You know, it's like kind of like the real kind of like hate comics and things like that. You know, they're only going to attract a certain audience, and it might not be the audience you want. Might
not be. Yeah. I think that when we're critical or judgmental, I don't think we're doing it because we're bad people. I think that, at least I know your listeners, you know, aren't doing it because of that.
No, not at all.
No, not at all. You know, your folks, if I was thinking about your audience, I'd think they're loving, they're gracious, they're kind, they're supportive, they're connected, they're humanists, etc. Do I have it in a nutshell there?
Yeah. You guys blushing out there? I bet you are.
Well, it's true. I mean, you know, I did my research. So, but the thing is that even so, it's possible that some of them have criticized others that they didn't know, or were negative about something in a way that was unnecessary, and in large part just because they had some frustration about something and it was a way to express it. So one of the things that I ask my students to do is to look at their Facebook profiles for the last year and count how many negative or critical comments or posts that they have made in that time. You know, a negative political post, you know, comment, you know, about what the hell was Lady Gaga wearing? You know, you know, oh, I hate that song, you know, whatever it is. Those are all criticisms. What we can do doesn't mean we have to like everything, of course, but what we can do is we can choose. We can take two perspectives. We can say, well, I like things or I don't like things. I hate things or I like things. Instead of that, we can say, well, I really like that. That really resonates with me, but that doesn't really resonate with me. But that doesn't mean it's bad. It's just for somebody else.
Yeah, we don't have to just reject something out of hand. We can choose other things. Yeah.
And there's 9 billion people in the world. So, you know, I just don't buy that that I'm entitled enough to be the arbiter of all things.
Do you know? Really? Who has the energy for that? Come on.
Yeah. This is what we often do. We decide that we are the critical voice of all things that we see. Everything we see, we judge around us. So I think that the performers are often very tolerant people because they step into other people's shoes easily. They see the world from lots of different perspectives. They're open to lots of different experiences. And as a result, they become very accepting. Now, I don't mean accepting of inappropriate behavior. If someone says a racial slur in front of me, they're going to have a conversation with me. So I'm not talking about that, but I'm talking about, tolerant of other, views that are not hurtful, towards people, et cetera. So, this gets into philosophy and we can talk about this forever, but
sure.
If I just brought it down to simple terms, if we criticize a lot, if we're negative a lot, then we may not be willing to put ourselves out on the line quite as much. We may not be willing to make as big choices because we know that when we make those big choices, then when we put ourselves out there and we're front and center and we're in the public eye, well, then people will criticize us and we're afraid of that. So if we are not criticizing others, it doesn't hurt as much when people criticize us because we don't take it as personally.
That's a really good point. It's kind of the coming full circle. And anything that, irritates us about other people, we often, look back to ourselves and see where that gets reflected in our own character, behavior, personality, as the case may be. So that makes a lot of sense. Michael, I wanted to make sure everybody knows about a couple of different ways to get in touch with you and to go deeper because Michael's podcast is extremely powerful. It's kind of a masterclass in public speaking and performance. So I'm going to recommend that everybody go and check that out at stealtheshow.com, or if you're on your phone listening to this right now, you can find it on Stitcher or on iTunes at Steal the Show. And coming up, you also want to know that in Fort Lauderdale, Michael has a 3-day live event. You can find more information at heroicpublicspeaking.com/live. And that's coming up in mid-February. So if you are finding that you want to go deeper, you want to get some training as a public speaker, I can't see any better option than to go and work with Michael at his 3-day live event. Michael, thank you so much for joining me here today and for the wisdom, the tips, and your experience and putting everything so beautifully into story for us today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Really great. I have one last tiny question for you, maybe not so tiny. I'd like to know from all of our guests, as we're all out in this mission that we have at Start Something of 10,000 thriving businesses, it's powerful to leave a legacy. What's the legacy that you'd like to leave?
Just happy, healthy, productive children who contribute to the world in a positive way. That's all. That's as simple as it is for me.
Beautiful. Thank you, Michael. I really appreciate that. And thank you for being an example to your children so that they're growing up inside of this message of being authentic and making a difference in the world. Really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure.
All right. And thank you, Superstarters, for joining us. Make sure you join us next week at the Start Something Show.
Start something with purpose. Start something with freedom. Start something now. Go to thestartsomethingshow.com, join our community of superstarters, and get your perfect day planner pack, a free resource to help you create the life you've dreamed of living. Take action now, and we'll see you for our next exciting episode.